Hello, my name is Sam Johnson and I'm a voice teacher. Today I am joined with special guest, my girlfriend Vanessa Vega, who is an opera singer. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So we are going to be reacting to and analyzing what song?
Oh, patria mia.
And who's going to do it?
Miss Leontyne Price.
Tell our amazing audience who Miss Leontyne Price is.
Leontyne Price is a living legend in the opera world and the world in general. She was very famous for singing this particular role, Aida, the title role in Aida, which is one of Verdi's operas.
Oh, there's a bunny outside.
Oh, cute! Bunny distractions. So we are very happy to be celebrating this woman and all of her wonderful accomplishments.
And this is the original Aida. This one is by Verdi, not by Tim Rice.
Yeah.
And that's why it's an opera instead of a musical, because it's by Verdi. That's the only qualifier.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have something to promote.
I do. I am so excited. I will be starting my master's degree at Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas.
Go Bobcats.
Woo woo. And we are also doing a summer program this summer. Usually it's in person, but the only bright side of this is we're going to be doing it online this summer. It's a 1-week intensive, July 19th through the 25th, open to any and all high school students interested in anything with classical music or musical theater. It's a really great opportunity to get to know the faculty, work with all-star singers, diction coaches. You'll get to do acting classes with Mark Reynolds, one of our good friends and fabulous voice teacher. So really great opportunities, and now anybody can participate online.
So go check out the link in the description if you are a high schooler interested in this kind of stuff, or you know a high schooler interested in this kind of stuff, because it is a very competitive world and you want to get started early. Like, don't wait until you're in college to start doing this kind of stuff. So let's see some Leontyne. She has really good dynamic control on that F.
It's a beautiful note, and depending on your voice, it's one of the areas that where it's kind of a transition in your passaggi, or the notes that you fear.
It is a very fearful note, and so when we see people who are able to do it in such a delicate way, it really shows mastery of the instrument. That messy voce going from the really, really quiet note to a very loud note, it's a very good thing that she's able to do. That said, that the quietest that she sings in this is still going to be most people's fairly loud, and that's why at a high level like this, you need to be able to fill a large room unamplified, and she is able to do that, and she has a dramatic voice. What does a dramatic voice mean?
A dramatic voice is one that is just naturally larger than the average voice. So for certain composers like Verdi or Wagner, if you don't have a dramatic voice and you try to sing them, you may die.
You won't be heard. Number one, you won't be heard over the orchestra, depending on how big the orchestra is. But by trying to be heard over the orchestra, you will perish.
My beauty
So everything is kind of based around that oo place right now, which is a fairly back vowel. When people say forward and back vowels, usually they're referring to where the hump of the tongue is. So if that tongue hump is a little bit more forward on like an E or an A, then that would be considered more of a forward vowel. And then like an oo or an awk tends to become more of a back vowel. And so a thing that's challenging in voice training is trying to get it so that it doesn't sound drastically different from like super forward to super back. With her and with a lot of opera singers, especially in the 80s, like everything was a little further back than I think they're even tending to go toward now. But it just gives a slightly different color. And in addition to that, she's just got that kind of voice type. Like there's a reason that she is one of the most successful sopranos. So now she started opening her mouth really big, but it still had that consistent sound. And that's something that I notice with a lot of really, really high level singers is once they know what it feels like internally to like have a consistent feeling and consistent sound, they have a lot more space to do things with the front of their mouth, where if a brand new singer started doing this kind of thing, it would likely throw off all of the good things that they were doing. And that's why I focus so much on trying to find these round, neutral, narrow vowels, because it usually helps people when you're a beginner. But when you're this good, you have the freedom to start doing different things. Because the internal space remains fairly consistent, even though that lip aperture changes.
And one thing that I know you talk a lot about with your students and that everybody should be talking about are onsets. And if you'll notice, she does an impeccable job with all of her onsets being neutral.
So what is an onset? Because I've said it a bunch, but it really deserves repeating.
So an onset is the way that you start a note or a phrase which is not connected to other notes. So when she starts singing, if she went, oh, that would be a glottal onset.
She doesn't do that.
No.
She uses a neutral onset. There are 4 onsets. There's the glottal one, which Vanessa just demonstrated. There's an aspirate, which sounds like
huh.
And so aspirate means air, so it lets air through the glottis first. The glottal starts with the glottis closed, and neutral sounds like
oh.
Good, and vocal fry sounds like yeah, so you use that one a lot more in pop music. Have you ever seen vocal fry used stylistically in opera?
Not that I know of. I've heard if Britney Spears wrote an opera, then maybe we'd hear it.
Fingers crossed, Britney. Give us that goodness. I loved that little breath that she took. And this is one of the beautiful things you can do when you're with a live orchestra. It was on beat, but it was like, she just took her time with that breath. It was making the orchestra follow her. That slide up, that ooh into the O was so pretty.
Oh my gosh.
So she's spending a ton of time up on that F. This spends a ton of time on that second bridge, that second passaggio. At that point, you need to have such a big space between the roof of your mouth and your tongue. It's just got to be this all the time. La, 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 or else it'll start sounding kind of pulley and weird. And she does that.
Yeah.
Intense face. Crescendo kills me. It sounds so quiet to me, but like that hall is massive.
This is where you really see her literally sparkle is in these moments.
She is literally a vampire.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about when you even start an onset that high, if your mouth isn't already open, you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
And so that's why you see her, and it's a time where you can emote as an actress and say, you know, I need to show why I'm taking this breath. And the other most important part is she's saying these words over and over. So they need to have new meaning to her and new meaning to the audience. Every time she sings them, we need to feel something different. And she's making that happen. I mean, we go from, oh my gosh, to, ooh, when she does that crescendo up. And just keeps us captured in those same words.
Yeah. And also the volume thing that I was talking about, because you're 100% right with that, but the volume thing, it's less a volume thing in this situation and more a just tone of voice. Because even though it needs to be heard in this massive hall, which it has great acoustics, it's going to help her out, but she still has to create some sort of sound. It has a color that is just so much more intimate. And then it gives her a lot of room. So like when this gets to the biggest parts of the song, that loud stuff is going to matter. But try to pay attention not just to the difference in volume, but to the difference in that coloring when she gets to anything that's like bigger and louder sounding.
Yeah, she's living in that emotion.
Good. How do you sing an E vowel on anything above an A?
It doesn't become an E vowel anymore.
You can still hear quite a bit of clarity with her, though, which is pretty amazing.
It's a thinking of the vowel, and if you think it, it will happen.
Yeah, and that's where some of this repetition really serves her, because as an audience, we're expecting that E. And so even though it is physically impossible to go E up there and have it sound good with your mouth looking like this, E, she goes, A. It doesn't modify all the way to an I, but it has so much space, which is not how we would naturally speak an E. So if we look at where that is, at that A, like anything above that, it'll start turning more to an A, probably. But if you look at that vowel position, that mouth position, and then go down to where you could get a more true E, you have to kind of fill in the gaps for all of the notes in between of letting the jaw start dropping, because it's not just a binary, we go from E to A, there's all of that space in between
you
it.
start to relax the vowel is what I think of.
Yeah.
And this is also a testament to Verdi of, he's introduced this phrase to us again many times. We know what she's going to say. So when she gets to the high notes where it says somebody might have to relax the vowel or modify it a little bit, we know what she's going to say. So even if it doesn't sound exactly right, the audience already says, oh, well, she's saying, oh, patria mia.
Yep. And then that also goes back to that F. Like, because she was doing that F so well, it was just a slight modification up to the A. Where if the F was really struggling, the A would be a massive change, and then it wouldn't sound nearly as fluid to us or feel as good to her. What would you call that? Like, in terms of registration, that it's a C. It sounded still, like, very heady to me, but it's at that point where, you know, even the highest voice types need to start coming back down into some sort of chesty configuration. Like, if that doesn't happen by C or D on the way down, then all of this octave is going to sound like nothing.
Yeah, that's where you definitely need to know your voice, because again, she's aiming for consistency here, and her tone color still remains the same.
Yep.
So she was all the way, you know, towards the top of this piece and in the climax, but yet we still need to be present and hear those lower notes. So that's a lot of knowing your voice and saying, okay, well, what do I need to do when I shift down to that lower note to make it sound the same, where all of a sudden I'm not going, my, and trying to do
Or at the same time, not going to, like, to that Mickey Mouse voice.
We're not doing any of those ma.
Well, it's like if you pull this falsetto, if you pull a head tone down, whether you want to call this falsetto or head or whatever, I don't think it really matters. But like going from ooh, ooh, it could kind of get into this kind of a voice. And that's not what it sounds like either. So it becomes less about what register you're singing in, and is this chest voice or head voice? It doesn't matter. It sounds even.
Yeah.
You need to ask for the evenness, and the registration will come to follow it.
Yeah.
It's so pretty. I really miss going to the opera.
Me too. This makes me very emotional because I had several operas planned, tickets, I was going, and weeks before I was supposed to be there.
The world ended. It really sucks. There's just something magical about being in the room when people are singing like this. And with classical music, recordings are great, but they don't hold up in the same way as just being in the room. So if you are a person who has always been kind of hesitant about classical music, when the world becomes safe enough that people are performing and you feel comfortable to be able to do that, please go support classical musicians. It's just a different world being in the room. If you're hearing a recording, like, microphones can't pick up the dynamic range as well. You're never going to have a successful time listening to this aria in a car while it's moving. Like, it just doesn't work in the same way that pop music does, and you have to be there to really get it. Okay, now she's picking up. Already just the tone of her voice, like it's so much more vibrant compared to everything leading into it. Do you know what Aida wants in this scene?
So at this point, she is being taken from her homeland. Her homeland is being taken over by other people, and, you know, so this is basically her crying for her country, you know. Think of Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. If you hear in the last little section where she said my pew, she really emphasized my pew. So this is mine. And so this is where she starts to get that emboldened of, you know, towards the beginning you could really feel the sorrow and the sad pain, and now this is more of I'm hurt, I'm starting to get angry.
It's starting to turn more into a cry and an angry cry. Yeah. And you can hear that in her tone. She really does have so much warmth even as she starts getting to those louder ones. A lot of people will just, it becomes a much brighter sound as they get louder. That's a very rare voice. And super well trained. It is interesting that she breathes through that kind of snarl every time she goes.
And what I love about that, and I'll tell you the helpfulness of that, is number one, if you breathe through your nose, everything fills up so much more than if you just breathe through your mouth. It's a much shallower breath. No matter if you're taking a huge breath through your mouth, you get a much bigger, fuller breath through your nose. So she's tanking up air is number one.
So you think even though her mouth is open like that, she's breathing primarily through her nose?
Yeah, it gives just an extra amount. And then the other thing it does is it lifts the soft palate, which is really helpful for those onsets around the F and the G.
Yeah. So you're using that you're finding the vocal tract configuration that will work well for that note, and then breathing in through it so that you don't have to, you're using that as the preparation. You don't need to like start blossoming into it or find it immediately. You already know what that feels like, and you just start the sound, which is really tricky.
Yeah, and on top of that, one of the most helpful things that I've learned is breathing in the vowel you're going to sing when you sing on a vowel with your onset. So if you're going into an O, breathe in that O, and you're right there. Because
if you breathe in just like, oh, most often you won't really find the right space.
Yeah, you're not going to be right there ready for it.
Yeah. So it sounds like a really long phrase because it is a really long phrase, but there are a few reasons that she's able to get through that phrase so successfully without sounding like she's running out of air. One is just keeping in mind how the voice works. It's air moving past some little muscles and then forming it into a vowel. So we want to use that air efficiently. Some of that is by using these bigger muscles in your torso to slow that air from flying out. Some of it is also just having her vocal folds resist that air. But she's not using very much air through it. Like, she still could probably keep going. And it's a really long phrase, but...
And also when I talked about how she breathed in with the nose and taking up just that...
It just gives you more air. And with pop music, don't worry about it. Like, you're getting enough air if you're singing pop music. You just don't have long enough phrases almost always. There are a few songs, I guess, like... notably, I've been working on this song, Someone You Loved by Louis Capaldi with some people lately. And there's a part in the bridge that I think it's like 8 bars or something that's all one thing. I don't know exactly how long, but it's fairly long. But most of the time you don't really need to worry about how much air you're getting, because if you overtank with pop music, you're likely going to overcompress or overblow, or something weird is going to happen. But when you're thinking about very repertoire specific things like this, you need to know how to get a nice full breath. That said, even with pop music, going with the nose thing is a really good thing because it warms your air when you're breathing through your nose. It moisturizes your air when you're breathing through your nose in a way that it doesn't when you're breathing through your mouth. And it does tend to encourage your diaphragm to drop and to have a nice low breath, even if it's not a completely full low breath. Okay, so she starts at the A, and then she gets up to that C, and she diminuendos into it, and then she crescendos on the way back down out of it.
And she lets it go for years.
It almost sounds like a flip. That's the first time that I've heard like that kind of a sound from her. The do. Well, no, going from the do. Like it yeah. It sounded flip-y-ish. That's the first time that it was like a change in color between a low note and a high note that she did, which, going back to what we were saying earlier, what emotionally would make someone sound like that? Because it's gotta come from that. When you're this high level, I feel like there are some people who take these interesting things that are emotionally driven and they try to imitate it, and it messes with their vocal technique a little bit. It's gotta come from like an even palette first, an even canvas, and then these things happen because they mean something. It's not just, if she wanted it to sound less flippy, she would make it sound less flippy.
And who knows, we're getting towards the end of the aria, and that's also just a personally emotional thing, not even with the character at this point.
Yeah.
So I feel like that could be a
Wait,
factor.
you're saying that singers are people?
Who knew?
Yeah, she can sing. So that last note was the A. She's got a very, very big mouth up at that point. You need to have a lot of space when you're singing that high of a note. What happens is first you need to like run out of space with that, and then the larynx starts rising as you go higher in order to make it continue working. So there is a point where the larynx needs to start going a little higher. It's just usually not until about the C, where a lot of novice singers, it'll try happening much, much earlier. And so that's something that you need to kind of train out. But she also didn't go all the way to an A. It was still a very warm vowel, both in terms of just what it looked like and what it sounded like.
It's, again, that relaxed vowel place of, I never try and think of modifying a vowel or making sure it's in this space or that space, because you get too many things to think about, it's not helpful anymore. Yeah. So to me, the key is just relax, the higher you get.
You could see about halfway through that she started more and then she rounded it a little as it went on. It was like, I wonder if she just checked in and was like making sure that she wasn't holding in any way or something, because that's a thing that you can do when you're sustaining, is just check in to make sure that you're not like getting weird tensions.
And once you get up high, I mean, if you, again, we know what words she's gonna sing. It's not something we have to guess based off of how she pronounces it. And just to get yourself in that space, maybe an ah is gonna help you a little more. And then how easy is it to be singing an ah and just round your lips the tiniest bit?
Yeah.
Then you got it.
And I don't even think she was thinking about rounding it with that. It just looked like she relaxed her cheeks.
Yeah.
A little bit, and that modified it enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, wow, she's really, really good.
Yeah.
And she's like 92 now, you said?
I think 93.
That's
But
fantastic.
yeah. Sing like that. Who knows how long you can live?
It is a causation. There are some like studies that say that singing is a really good thing for just overall health, both mental health and physical health. But yeah, she is a blessed lady.
Yeah.
In many ways, in terms of her blessing us with this sound.
Yeah, we have been blessed.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for making some sounds. Go check out the link in the description and register for that, because that will be a really useful thing for people who are stuck inside instead of being able to go out to all their fun summer camps.
Yeah, gives you some extra social time with people, gives you a little more knowledge of, things that can get you a head start if those are things you want to learn. Diction, acting classes, singing lessons, who doesn't need those?
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, share this video with your friends and with all of your other friends too. Have a good one.